Hi, everybody. Gene here. Welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, where every single week we answer the most common and uncommon questions about tapping and EFT so you can eliminate self-sabotage and take the action that you want. This episode is actually episode number 4 in what is turning into an 8 or 9 part series on healing fundamentals. And basically, these are ideas, including tap-alongs and scripts that you can use like normal. But these are ideas that help you to approach the healing process in a slightly more advanced way. Most of us learn the basics of tapping. We say phrases, we tap along, and that is a good, useful tool. And for some people, that's all they're ever going to need. But these are dispositions that impact the way that we heal, and they're thoughts about the way that we live, which is what we're going to talk about today, that really prevent us from moving forward in our healing process and moving forward and taking action daily because of the way that they are shaped. If you would like to check out the entire series, every single week we're adding a new one on Wednesday for the next number of weeks. You can check out the ones that are already published by going into the show notes and clicking on the Healing Fundamentals link right there at the top. Or if you're at the webpage, you can see the note at the top of the page. Click Healing Fundamentals and you will see the entire series. This is Gene Stelling. Welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 456, originally aired May 20th, 2020. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today, we are going to talk about and tap on the way that we judge our past choices and the way that we do that is uncharitable and unfair, which actually does us more harm than good when we are looking backwards. Before we do that, 2 quick announcements. First of all, I would like to thank Russ. Russ was the most recent person to support the Tapping Q&A podcast. If you'd like to be like Russ and support the podcast, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com/support. That's tappingqa.com/support. If you do become a supporter, you will receive some amazing free bonuses, as well as an opportunity possibly to work with me one-on-one. Thanks to all of the supporters of the show for making it possible. The second thing that I'd like to share is we have a free 10-part guide on how you can use tapping to eliminate self-sabotage. The guide is absolutely free. All you need to do is go to tappingqa.com, click on that big blue button, or if you happen to be in the website right now, just click on the blue link, the blue button up in the top of the right-hand column. Every single day for the next 10 days, we will send you a little bite-sized morsel that will help you to improve your tapping and take more action. The reason that we dole it out over a course of a number of days is it's too much information to get all at once. If you were presented with 10 ideas or 10 tools, there's no way that you would execute them all. And so by doing it this way and giving you a little bit at a time, every day you can take 3 or 4 minutes, try something new. Then at the end of 10 days, not only you have taken more action, but you can also choose the 2 or 3 of those tools that really work for you the best. Tappingqa.com, click the big blue button, and we will get you that guide absolutely free. It is a good, important thing that we look backwards, not to dwell on the past, but to learn from it, to look at the choices that we've made, to see where we were when we were making those choices, to most certainly take responsibility for our choices and the consequences of those choices, and as an evaluative tool that when we look at the past, we are able to learn, see the places that we need to transform. You know, if I look back on a project that I was working on, one of the things I always do is a delta plus analysis. And a delta plus analysis is delta, what would I do differently? And plus, what would I do again? And I find this to be a really useful way to evaluate the work so I do it better the next time. It's not what worked and what didn't, because sometimes the things that work, I would never do again because they were done in such a convoluted way and took way too much time. And oftentimes I come up with things that weren't in the plan that I want to repeat again. And so by naming it and claiming it, going, ooh, I want to do this again, I'm more likely to do it. Delta, the Greek symbol delta in physics, is used to denote change. And so it's what would I change? What would I do differently? Sometimes I would do things in a different order. Sometimes I would do them sooner. Sometimes I wouldn't do them at all. But it gives me the opportunity to evaluate. The problem is when we look back in this way is it's really easy to beat ourselves up. that we look at the past choices and think, oh, I could have done that better. And sometimes that's actually an honest assessment of the moment, that we had resources and information at our grasp that we could have used to make a different choice. Other times when we're doing that, we're taking the lessons we learned from doing that thing, or we're just taking the lessons that we've learned in life. And as we look back, we go, oh, I should have known better. But the reality is we didn't. And so we're judging ourselves on an unrealistic standard. It is okay for me to evaluate myself on not heeding warnings that were obvious and I knew about. It's not fair and just to myself to judge myself on warnings that I never would have seen because I didn't know to look out for them, or for knowledge I didn't have at the time. And there's a reason that we're really bad at looking backwards. And the reason is that the new normal, whatever our experience is, whatever our knowledge is, we assume we've always known that information. Like, I want you to try and remember a time before you knew how to walk or you knew how to drive. Like that's something that just doesn't resonate. Even as I know when I was 12, I was not driving, but as I think of my 12-year-old self and I imagine my 12-year-old self behind the wheel of a car, for some reason I believe that I could drive, and I couldn't. I wouldn't know how to do it. But as I think of that younger self, I'm taking the knowledge that I have today and imbuing it on that. And I'll give you a tangible example of this. 3 or 4 years ago, I was at a national event and I was part of a comedy stage. Over the course of 90 minutes, there were 6 or 7 acts on the stage, and they were all really good friends of mine. And so one of my friends, Chris, was going up to do his 7 little bit, which was really, really funny. And he asked me, since I was stage managing and standing on the edge of the stage, if I would videotape it for him on his phone just so he could evaluate it and maybe share it after the fact. And so he hands me his phone. And the phone that he handed me was an iPhone 6. I have been an iPhone user back to the iPhone 2, probably. And so I'm very, very familiar with iPhones. But 1 week before this particular event, I had upgraded to an iPhone 8. And the big innovation on the new iPhone, the iPhone 8 and forward, is the home button disappeared. And the entire phone was a screen versus a screen with a button below it, which meant the functionality, the way that you turned the phone on and off, the way that you unlocked it, all of those things were different from the generation previous. And so 1 week earlier, I had an iPhone 7, which is the exact same form factor as Chris's iPhone 6. So I used that form factor for years. But because I'd been using the new phone just for a week, it took me a good 15 seconds to remember how to use the old iPhone. And again, this isn't something from my distant past. This is something from a week prior. But the new normal, which was the new phone design, was what I understood. And it was almost as if my brain deleted all of the files associated with the old iPhone 6 or moved it to an external storage that was a long way away, that was hard to access because it was no longer useful. And so you can see the struggle that exists in our ability to accurately assess ourselves. I actually had a client who went through something like this. With transformation work, it's particularly hard to remember the past because when I'm adding an asset or I'm doing a physical transformation, it's easy to see the difference between those things. I couldn't do it. Now I can do it. I can see the value of the training. I weighed 110 pounds, then I weighed 95 pounds. I could see the physical change. I know the before and after. Lifting weight. I used to be able to lift 50 pounds. Now I can lift 75 pounds. They're tangible things to mark. But when we're letting things go, we quickly forget about what the old way was like. I like using the example of wearing a pair of shoes that are too tight. That when you take a pair of shoes off that are too tight, for the first 5 minutes, you can still feel the shoes gripping your feet as if they were still there. And then as your foot slowly expands back to its normal shape, as the circulation and moisture returns to the constricted skin that was pressed in, we stop feeling the constriction. And we can't remember what it was like to have that thing before. And so my clients who work with me over a long period of time, oftentimes at the beginning, we have a conversation about expectations. And one of the things I always say is, this probably isn't going to happen to you, but it happens from time to time that after 4 or 5 sessions, you're going to turn to me and say, Gene, you're so great. I really enjoy working with you. I love your personality, because they all say that. But I don't actually feel like we're getting somewhere. Like all this just feels kind of the same. I feel better, but there's no real difference because of the new normal. And this happens so much that I set this up beforehand. And so when it does happen up with a client, I will bring out the intake form and I'll say, great, thank you for that feedback. Let's take a look and see what you said 4 sessions ago, which oftentimes is 6 to 8 weeks ago, because I don't often work with clients every single week, that it gets spread out over time. And we bring out it and they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. I've forgotten how far I come. That happens every single time except for once. One time, client had this conversation with me after 4 or 5 sessions. They said, we're not making the progress I want. I'm like, awesome, thank you. Let's take a look at your feedback form, your intake form, to see what you said when we began. And I start reading it to them, and their response was, oh no, it was never that bad. I was just exaggerating. That the past, before the transformation, felt like so long ago and so incomprehensible, they could not believe that was their own experience. And that is not a shot or a judgment of my client. That is a statement of the way the subconscious mind works when we are navigating these sorts of things. And so because of this, we have a tendency to be way too hard on ourselves for our past choices and for the ways that we have navigated the world. Because we're seeing our past self through the information of today. And so one of the reasons why this is one of the fundamentals that's really important for us is if I'm really hard on myself for my past choices, then I'm spending all of this resource beating myself up, and it makes it much harder for me to be taking action in the moment because I think I did a crappy job. I think I need to be punished. I might even believe I don't deserve the success I'm having now because I made all of these mistakes in the past. So oftentimes when we are looking back, I find it really useful to take a few moments before we're dealing with the issue itself to set the table, giving ourselves permission to know that our assessment of the past and our past choices and our past self is not an accurate choice. So this is what it looks like. Tap on the side of the hand, take a nice big deep breath for me. And just tap along with me, repeating after me so you can see how easy this is. It is good for me to look back. It is good for me to evaluate my past choices. It is good for me to see where I have been, to take responsibility for my past choices, and to learn from my past. At the exact same time, I recognize the fact it is impossible for me to see my past self clearly. Because I've learned since then. I've grown since then. I have transformed since then. Which makes it hard for me to remember my previous self. to remember what I knew and didn't know back then. Once I know something now, there's a part of me that believes that I've always known that. Because this is human nature, because this is the human experience, I need to remind myself to be gentle with myself. When I'm evaluating my past, when I'm evaluating my previous choices. This doesn't mean I'm letting myself off the hook. This doesn't mean that I'm being thoughtless and careless. But I should only judge my past self on who I was in that moment and what I knew in that moment and what I was capable of in that moment. Because I know much more now than I did back then. And I'm doing myself a huge disservice if I'm only judging myself on what I know now. I can take responsibility and see myself for who I clearly was then. I can learn from the past while remembering I was in a different place when I was making those choices. I'm glad I'm the new me. I'm glad I'm continuing to evolve and grow. And part of that evolution is being gentle with my past self. Nice deep breath. And so you can see what I did there is I just put into words all the explanation that we did in the front end. But by taking 30 seconds to set up a tapping series or a tapping sequence or some time when we're looking at the past in that way, you're going to feel the tension and you're actually going to feel release about the past almost instantaneously. Not the entire thing, but much of our emotion about the past is our present day judgment of the past, not just what we were living through in the past. And so we're peeling off this outer layer of the issue that we're dealing with because we're putting ourselves in a position where we're looking at it more honestly and clearly about what was happening then, not who I am now. So the concept's pretty straightforward. It's a little subtle. It's important that we keep re-reminding ourselves of it. And when I say we, I'm using we because I need to re-remind myself of this idea as well, because it's easy for me to judge my past self pretty harshly because of who I am now and what I know today. If you know someone in your life who would enjoy this particular healing fundamental or any of them in the fundamental series, please pass them along. Don't spam your inbox and send them to everybody in the world. But if there is a person or two who would really enjoy this today that would help them in their transformation process, please pass it along. The most common way and the easiest way people find a new piece of resource is from the recommendation of a friend. And so you could be in a short email, a quick text message, a real transformational touch point for someone in your life today. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the Tapping Q&A podcast. And podcasting parlance, subscribe is always free. It's not like Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus where you're having to pay a monthly service. Subscribe simply means every single time a new episode comes out, it is delivered to you, so you don't miss the free goodness as we put it out every single week. You can subscribe in Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Pandora, Spotify. If you are one of my listeners who are subscribing through the Google Podcast app, and that's now available both in Android and Apple phones, please let me know. I would like to hear from you. I have some questions about your experience because I am not on that platform, but I would really love to make sure that you're getting the best experience possible. Just reach out to me, Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com. Also, if you have a question, a comment, a topic that we should be tapping on, someone I should be interviewing, I'm actually, after recording this today, spending a bunch of time following up with a bunch of guests who I'm going to be doing interviews with over the course of the next couple of weeks. This summer, after we finish this Healing Fundamentals series, I'm going to be sharing new interviews with you almost every single week. I'm super excited, but I love hearing the topics and the people you think I should be talking to. Some of the best episodes we've ever done have come from listener recommendations. If you haven't done so, also, we have a Tapping Q&A app. The app is available for Android and Apple phones. Not only do you have access to the entire back catalog of the podcast absolutely free, you also have printed out scripts in there. So if you click on the text tab, TEXT, you can have access to the scripts without having to listen to the tap along audio again. So you can tap anywhere you are, anytime, absolutely free. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Montrestelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Montrestelli Tapping Q&A. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Montrestelli and Tapping Q&A.